looking to do today, and thanking everybody for coming and participating. One of the goals of the Disaster Council that the Disaster Council set recently was to have a disaster drill with our community partners and our public safety partners. I believe so. Okay. We'll take 1 second to confirm that. Okay. Are you getting word that it's working, Laura? Okay. So we have a quarterly disaster council for the city. The disaster council includes myself. I'm James Vega, the city manager for the city of Ojai. Mayor Sticks with the city of Ojai, and it includes our police chief and our fire chief. And then we've appointed a couple of members, such as Chief McNeil. And so we meet quarterly, and we try to talk about different disaster-related, emergency-related items and how to be better prepared, and things like we're purchasing different advisory signs and radio station antennas and things like that. And we meet quarterly and do those things. And one of the goals we set about a year ago is to have a disaster drill with our community and public safety partners. We have all realized, and I'm sure a lot of people have realized this, that over the last few years, there's been a lot of changes and different things going on. And we realize that there's agencies where we had people that we had known and were contacts for years and years, and those people have left. And that looking ahead, we wanted to get in front of the next potential disaster and make sure that we were still connecting with all of our partners, and that we would know if, we'll see with the scenario today, but if we would know if, there's a fire and we need to evacuate horses, who do we call and who do we coordinate and who do we reach out to? So we wanted to have a drill where we really made sure to kind of work through that and rebuild the connections, make sure we still have those connections. And so we appreciate everybody being here today, because it is, although it's a disaster council meeting, we think that this is just important for the whole community and the whole valley moving forward. We had scheduled this before our real life emergency. So most of you had probably gotten the invites about a week before the storm. And so we kind of know and acknowledge that the storm was kind of our first emergency drill, I guess. And that some people may go, well, we just kind of went through these exercises, but we talked and decided that it's still important. We also saw some areas where we could make sure to work together and be better prepared. So I'm sure that'll come up today, and we'll talk through some of those things. But anyway, so that's just background on this. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. We're starting as our formal disaster council because we are a formal city board, and so that's why we're here. So it's not our ego; it's just having to formally start the meeting. So we have called the meeting to order. I'm gonna to save some time, I will note for the record that we have our fire chief, our fire department representative, our police chief, Mayor Sticks, and myself, and member McNeil. And so there's our attendance for the disaster council. And with that, we will get straight into the exercise. So I think one of the first parts of the exercise is inviting our public safety partners to join us. So who's going to take lead on that? Is that you, Robin?
Everybody at the table can sit.
Okay.
Is there anybody who is in the public big part who has not been? Yes. So if you want that.
Yeah, just whenever you want me to go.
So
Yeah, let's see.
So in the.
Good.
Okay. But it's fun. It's fun birdie. Must be so cool. You might.
okay, now that I think we have most of our partners here at the table, I do before we start the drill, I did want to start. And during the drill, we'll go around the table, so we'll get to everybody. But I did want to start just giving each of the disaster council members a second to introduce themselves as well. So we'll start with Mayor Sticks, and then we'll go to Chief. So you have a second to prepare.
Thanks, James. I'm Betsy Sticks, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to all the entities, stakeholders for being here today. This is really a monumental event. I want to say a huge thank you to our city manager, James Vega. Can we just give him a round of applause, please? James was told this could not be, you're blessing, James.
You could blame me for this.
This could not be done, and we're doing it. We've got all the stakeholders here, most of them, and it's really James just took this on as a personal goal, and here we are. So thank you so much, James. And it's, of course, all about collaboration and communication. So I'm really grateful to everyone here for working together to keep us safe. Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
I was going to just yell, but this might work better. Hi, everyone. For those of you that I haven't met yet, my name is Trina Newman, and this is my third day in. So I apologize if, there's a pause in my responses today. All of your faces, there's a couple faces are familiar to me. Everyone else I probably have yet to meet. So I look forward to meeting with you and working together. And even though this is day 3, I think like I was telling some individuals already, I might as well dive right in head first. And this is a great way to do it, to meet everybody in one place. So thank you.
Good morning, my name is Clint Garman.
Microphone.
My name is Clint Garman. I represent Supervisor Levere as one of the district reps for Ojai, Ventura, this whole valley. So I'm looking forward to meeting people and getting to know them a little bit better. And we have Anna Malgoza in the audience with us as well.
Hi, my name is Ron Oatman, representing Ventura County Fire Department on behalf of Fire Chief Barry Parker. I'm one of the 3 field battalion chiefs that are assigned up here on the ABC, the 24-hour shifts.
Hi, I'm Wayne Francis. I'm the amateur radio emergency coordinator for Ojai Valley and North County.
Hi, I'm Laura Ward, and I'm the publisher at the Ojai Valley News, and look forward to coordinating, making sure you have our contacts for Kimberly Rivers and Perry Van Houten. Some of you know, but Kimberly Rivers may be our point of contact person, so we'll work through that.
And I'm Laura Wilson. I'm planning manager for Southern California Edison.
The Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council, and I'm joined by Callie O'Connor, my executive assistant.
My name's Jim Rampton. I'm the emergency manager for
community memorial healthcare, which includes the Ojai Valley Hospital.
Greg Romy with Casitas Municipal Water District, Safety Officer.
Hi, I'm Nancy Jenkins. I am with the American Red Cross. And I'm here with one of our volunteers, Steve Frank, that we're happy to be here and I appreciate the re-engagement.
Eric Knight, I'm the Executive Director at the Humane Society of Ventura County. I'm joined here today by my colleagues, Director of Investigations, Kendra King, and Interim Shelter Director, Arlene McSween.
And with that, I think I will turn it over to Chief McNeil, who has graciously offered to host.
Host or facilitate, I think is the term I'm hoping to fill. So yes, as introduced, John McNeil, I sit on this disaster council. Actually sat on it back in 2017. I'll try and make my way around so people don't have to turn around. 2017, when I was in Ron Oatman's position, which is now Barry Parker's position. So I sat on it then, recently retired about a year and a half ago from county fire after 35 years. And also I'm a lifelong Ojai Valley resident. So I'm hoping some of that has some relevancy with what we're going to try and do here for the next hour and a half or so, which is facilitate a natural disaster and see how the primary stakeholders in not only the city of Ojai, but the Ojai Valley area come together and collaborate their efforts to minimize, of course, injuries, fatalities, everything that goes with a natural disaster, minimize property damage, set up recovery efforts, and really just serve the community in the best way we can. So part of the scenario is a replicated EOC. EOC is Emergency Operations Center. So for the public watching or the audience, there'll be a lot of acronyms. So I apologize up front for that, but everyone sitting at the table operates under acronyms. Your public safety partners basically live by acronyms. And it's an effort to be efficient with discussing topics and managing incidents. So with all that said, I think I've got everything out as a heads up. So I will be facilitating for the next hour and a half. Like I said, I'm going to go over some objectives in a second here, but I just wanted to let everyone know that there is bathrooms in the facility and they're down this through the open door right there. And I think there is water in the back. I think you have to, there's water in the back and bathrooms. So I'll finish with that. Okay, so the objectives of this next hour and a half, and Andrea just stepped out. Anyone that has decent penmanship, can we write these? Someone from planning. Perfect. And there'll be 4 lines worth, just to set the scale. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to test our collective processes and skills amongst our main stakeholders. So if we can write the first one down as test. You got relieved. And write the word collective somewhere in there. Thank you. Okay, third objective is to identify the who, the what, and the where. And really what this is if you're a stakeholder, we throw out the scenario, right? And we're all dealing with a disaster in front of us, and you represent one of the seats at the table here. If you can answer the who are you, what role do you have in this disaster, what actions are you going to take? Do you have plans in place that you're going to implement? And then where do you go, or where do the people that are expecting you to lead them, where do they go? And it may not be anywhere. It may be staying put. But if you we're trying to simplify during a disaster when nerves are up, there's a lot of fast moving discussions. You can kind of simplify it and just answer the who, what, and the where. So we want to hit that as an objective. The third objective is to review this next hour and a half. We call it an after action review is the official term we use. And really it's a tool to plan for future efforts, right? So we will keep notes as we have this discussion moving forward on the scenario, and then we'll review it at the end. And hopefully if something wasn't clear during the scenario that we could. You said after action review. Or review after action is fine. Yeah. Okay, the last objective is we got to be done by noon. So whatever time that is. So that's about an hour and a half. Okay, so really my role here is just I'm gonna speak to what the scenario is. I'll give some details to it so we can all get our mindset on what it is we're dealing with. And then really as a facilitator, I'm just going to facilitate the discussion. So we will start with our primary stakeholders and ask questions on, the who, what, and where on their roles. And then we'll trickle it out to pretty much everyone at the table. Okay. And then, sorry about no mic there. Anyone in the audience, if you do have questions, if you can just hold them till the end, we would appreciate that so we can keep this discussion moving forward. So any questions from the table up here on what we plan on doing? Okay. In case you didn't know, that was a simulated earthquake, okay, without the shaking. Oh, great. Welcome. All right, welcome. Okay, so we just heard what sounded like an earthquake. So we've had to set the scenario, it is today. It is Wednesday. It is 10:30 in the morning. It is 67 degrees outside. We have little to no wind. And we've just had a 6.7 magnitude earthquake centered near Santa Paula that has lasted about 45 to 60 seconds. Okay. So initial reports are coming in that several buildings and transportation corridors are damaged. Numerous gas leaks, power outages in the city and surrounding areas of Ojai. No confirmed reports at this time of any fatalities or injuries, although we do have some buildings that have collapsed or are severely damaged, including one that's on fire. The transportation corridors, we have several bridges and roadways that are compromised. We have power outages to about 80% of the city and surrounding area. This includes City Hall, the EOC, where the EOC is City Hall, PD, where the EOC is located, are without power, but are running on backup power. Let's see other impacts. We have unconfirmed reports of horses running loose in Persimmon Hill toward Creek Road. Okay, so that kind of sets the scenario initially, and then we'll add more details to that as we get this discussion going. So just also to bring this into perspective as a reality, I mean, how many realize that are aware that Malibu had a 4.2 earthquake at like 4 this morning or 2 this morning? Most of us, right? So we're keeping in touch with that. So the reality is we just had an earthquake fairly nearby. The script I just read was a template from the Ferndale earthquake, which was in Humboldt County a month ago. I think they had an aftershock, which was actually on January 1st of 22. So the reality is it's going to happen. So the earthquake is a real deal. The reason we picked an earthquake and not a fire or flood or some of the other disasters is the city and our area has experienced fires on a regular basis, especially impactful fires. So we wanted to kind of come off that and make it known or just remind everyone that we don't just deal with fires, right? We're dealing with quite a few other emergencies. The other challenge with an earthquake is you don't have the luxury of weather that's leading up to a potential disaster, right? So when an earthquake hits, we're sitting in this room, it jolts us for 45 to 60 seconds. It impacts us the way that script just read. So hopefully that brings the chance of this back to reality, right? Or into a reality perspective. So with that, we've had the scenario read. So I want to start with James Vega, and you've been made aware, whether you felt it or you were getting information from whoever you get your information from, you've been made aware of this with those impacts. What is your thought process? What do you do?
Yeah, I thought we were going to start with an easy one. So that's there's a lot to that. First thing that I typically do, we did with the storm, I would follow the same process with the earthquake, is that my first call typically is to the police chief and the fire chief. you know, and it's calling them, seeing what they're hearing. I'm assuming and hoping and assuming that they are getting the words straight from the county EOC and the county's emergency operations center on what they're hearing and seeing county-wide to help us gauge, you know, earthquake was centered in Santa Paula. You know, if Santa Paula is the center of it and they're having all these issues, we might not get help for a while. If most of the help or if most of the damage is in Ojai, maybe then we can get some resources to Ojai, you know. So there's kind of that initial conversation with police and fire. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are we getting from the county EOC? What do we need to do? Are any roads damaged? Are we getting any calls? Because we would get them. We've had this experience with the Thomas fire and the storm. We get some calls, but a lot of calls are going to the police department and the fire department. You know, so we're kind of trying to make sure that we're all connecting and getting the same information. So if somebody's if we're hearing that there's calls that tree went down and is blocking a street that people can't get through the street now, then we can get our public works crew out there and start clearing streets. If power's knocked out, and with something like this, I imagine it would be, then we can call and contact our SCE contacts, make sure that they are aware of it and that they're getting involved. I heard the issue about the horses running loose in Persimmon Hill. You know, we'd be on the phone with animal control at that point and trying to work with them and see what can be done. If the feedback we're getting, like with the storm, was for the most part, in the city, we had some blocked storm drains. Okay, we're going to get public works out there. We didn't really have major damage within the city, fortunately. But if the feedback we're getting in those conversations is there's a lot of damage, there's a lot of problems, we need some support, then we would activate our EOC, our citywide EOC. As Chief McNeil mentioned, we've kind of simulated that so people can see it because it sounds very mysterious, but it's really not. It's the tables around us. These are the city staff that would staff the EOC. Our room normally is in the police station, but it's a small room, so we simulated it here, but it essentially would look like this. And we have our planning and building department representatives there in case there's damaged buildings that we're hearing about and things like that. We have our finance department there to start tracking, you know, expenses on if we need to order things or get overtime to get people out overnight and all those types of things. And then we have our communications team, which has been a big focus for us following the Thomas fire, where we really didn't have a communications team within the city. And so the communications team would be manning the phones to answer calls from residents asking for help and assistance or information. They'd be posting information online. They'd be connecting with our newspaper partners and also our city council members, which one of the roles that I'll want to circle back to is kind of talking through the city council as well. I think is looked to for information. And I think where we haven't done well in the past that we want to do in the future is give them information so that when residents are calling them, they have information as well. So that's just a start of, you know, with that initial call, the things we'd be looking to do is making contact with our public safety partners, find out what's going on countywide, and then do we need to activate our EOC?
And that's key is getting to the decision. I would imagine it's key for you. Get to the decision whether he opens the EOC or not.
Yeah. And
if the EOC is open and all it does is become a physical hub to gather information and disseminate information, success, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
So if it goes beyond that and engages all of the units that you see situated around here with their individual roles, great. But at a minimum, I think the biggest complaint communities here and public agencies here during a disaster, we didn't get enough information. Or we didn't get accurate information. So even if it just becomes an information hub, it's a huge success. So I think before we go to Chief Newman, maybe we'll explain the EOC roles real quick, and then we'll move down the table on input. So this is an emergency operations center model replica, right? This table doesn't have these players sitting here necessarily, but it is good to have a table to where when you have moments during your EOC operations, you need to bring in stakeholders to have a discussion and a face-to-face discussion because communications are down or it just makes sense to go face-to-face. Then that's why the center table is where it is. But the real work happens on the perimeter, and I'd love to just go with one rep from each of the areas, starting with operations, and just explain in a minute or less on what your role is and what you can be expected to do.
Thanks, Chief. So my name is Tom Jezrek. I'm the building official for the city of Ojai. As part of operations, we work with fire, police, EMS, emergency services, public works to actually be the boots on the ground and observe what is out there. In an earthquake, my team is going to be out there doing initially windshield surveys on what the damage is throughout the city. And then we will report back to the other departments and let them know that, okay, these number of structures are damaged. We're probably going to have to relocate people. Then we have to start, the other divisions are going to have to start thinking about how are we going to get people to facilities for them to stay at and where they're going to go. So it's kind of critical to understand how many people are going to need to be relocated in this scenario, especially, and how long they're going to be. Because we can't have people living in houses that don't have power, don't have water. So if those services are cut off, then we're going to have to help them find those facilities.
Hello, my name is Luis. I'm the city's recreation supervisor and part of the logistics team. In the logistics section, the primary responsibility of our section is to ensure the acquisition, transportation, and mobilization of resources to support response efforts at the disaster site, public shelters, as well as the EOC. In addition to that, our section works collaboratively with all the other sections to assure that we are all in the know of the supplies that are available to us, in addition to our community partners, to assure that we know and they know where resources are in case any of those resources need to be exchanged between agencies there.
Good morning. My name is Pam Greer. I'm representing the finance department. In finance, it's how we're going to pay for what we need and how do we get reimbursement back from FEMA. So our primary responsibility will be getting the credit card out, having a phone, making sure that we contact county CEOs, finance department to make sure that if they already have a contract in place where we can get supplies, and that's up to the other department how we're going to get it in here, but making sure that finance has the incident number from FEMA, and if it's not at that level, making sure that whoever picks up the supplies for this valley, that there is a task code or a project code so that we can track and report out how much did this incident cost, the city. And number one thing, of course, is reimbursement. So whatever we get, you must have the name of the incident or the incident number from FEMA or the city's task code.
Good morning. My name is Lucas Seibert. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Ojai. I'm with planning, and I didn't see intelligence on there, but we're planning / intelligence with a capital I. I think it's important. So what we do is essentially is that we're, just like we do in planning, we're collecting information, we're documenting. Just like we do in planning, it's location, documenting. As information comes in from outside sources, we're taking that information, compiling it down, either putting it up on a board, on a map, or we're collecting it and putting it in documents that we can use for further reference as summaries or as information that we can get out to the EOC director or the PIO in terms of getting that information out to the public. For the gathering piece, it really comes in through emails, phone calls. We'd be potentially reaching out to fire and PD and checking in with them, seeing if they're hearing anything, if there's any changes, updates that's been going on. It's not just sitting and waiting, it's going out and searching for that information as well. I think that's as far as I'm going to go at this point, because I think we're going to, okay. I'll keep talking.
Good morning. The public information section is responsible for, like it says, getting information out to the public, but our role is really connecting with all of the different partners around the table to make sure that the information that we are getting from the county is accurate and that we're getting it back out to the public. So we liaison with county EOC to make sure that everything's going out to our local constituents, but then also we're liaisoning with all of you to get that localized information that might not have gotten bumped up to the county level. So we're just watching all of those avenues and then channeling out information on a regular basis. And in addition, we're going to have team members that will be working on rumor control. So watching social media, seeing what people are saying that's not true. That's one of the biggest issues we have found in the past, is that things get out there and they can really blow up if we don't counter them with accurate information. And then, of course, keeping council informed. So that's the last part. We'll have a dedicated member who just works with the PIO and with the director of the EOC and make sure that council is updated regularly. So when people reach out to the mayor and the council, that they can answer the questions with the correct information.
Great, thank you. So yeah, again, the who, what, and the where, right, of each role in this big team that we're part of. So one position that was left out, but James has already talked, so I was going to just do a quick brief, is there's going to be an incident commander. There's got to be some lead over this whole effort, this room that we've set up, right? So the technical term is incident commander, it's EOC director, but that is the responsibility of the city manager or his designee. So how does it work, right? And there's a lot of formal processes within this team. And let's just take the running horses on Torrey Creek Road as an example. That information comes in. At least the director, James, has some way. How am I going to handle that? Well, we need to confirm, is it accurate? Operations, do you have people out in the field right now? Police chief, fire chief, do you guys have resources in that area? Can you confirm this is an issue? If it's confirmed, you can document it through your planning team here that's got a running tally, basically, or a journal they're keeping of all the issues and discussions that are taking place throughout the opening and running of the EOC. So they document. Eventually, the information's got to get out, right? Yes, it is confirmed. We do have running horses. Someone from logistics or maybe even finance is already talking with people from Humane Society. Maybe they're the best resource to go and deal with the loose horses running Torrey Creek Road. So that's kind of how it works. You're going to engage kind of everyone, and then it will be noted. And as you do a briefing, because now city council has a lot of wants and desires to get the information, and we understand why, they can get a briefing, a proper briefing from this EOC. And that would just be one of the things. Hey, at 8 in the morning, we had this issue with these horses. We addressed it. This was the outcome. This was the other issue. And that's kind of how this works. It's very clunky in the beginning, because remember, we had just had an earthquake during business hours. Everyone had something else to do. We weren't sitting in this room all set up. So they're filtering in. The city staff is filtering in. They're setting up their stations. It's just clunky in the beginning. This model is exactly the way fire and law do their incident command posts. So there's a reason behind all this, and it's all supposed to integrate seamlessly, right? So one last thing I want to talk about before we move on into the scenario is, we've heard it before, Ventura County Office of Emergency Services. That is a bureau, or it's a unit within the Sheriff's Department. It's led by Patrick Maynard, and they set up the county EOC. Robust staffing, well connected. Unfortunately, they've been exercising their skills on a regular basis probably since 2000. Well, even I don't know, I'll go back, let's say 10 years, maybe 15. They couldn't make it today. They're actually doing some FEMA work around our valley and the western part of the county from the recent storms. So, but what they do is they are the overarching agency or overarching entity that coordinates all of this. And this EOC is not wanting to duplicate that effort, but want to enhance it and want to lean on the county with that information sharing, resource sharing, whatever it may be. So let's go back to the horse scenario, right? we're engaging a county agency to mitigate that, right? We called the animal services, or is it Humane Society? Am I saying the right term?
So, VCAS, Ventura County Animal Services, which is located in Camarillo.
Okay.
Is the county animal services.
Yes.
Humane Society is an independent private 501c3, but of course we work cross-agency very well.
Thank you. Right. And that's the key to success, is that you collaborate with other agencies doing similar work. Right. So I apologize if I don't use the right terms, but the idea is to discuss it openly and so everyone's comfortable. So when we come together, it's not so unfamiliar. It's like, well, who is that? Well, okay. So because when you come together and it's a disaster, there's going to be heightened stress and everything else that goes with human behaviors to responses. Right. So it makes it that much easier when you can maybe go first name basis with your partner that's sitting at the table. So that's just a little bit of an example. One of the first things the EOC staff does when they set up the EOC is they log on to vcemergency.com, and it is replicated on that monitor. I don't think anyone from this room can see it. That is a unbelievable website. I highly recommend bookmarking, figure out a way to get to that right away, assuming you have power and internet service during the outage. And we'll get into communication issues in a little bit, but that is really one of the first things the EOC staff does, because the city EOC staff does, because again, we don't want to duplicate services, and we want to really lean on the county, because the county is going to bring in state and federal resources, because eventually this leads to a recovery effort, right? And we have to get people back in their homes, utilities restored, bills paid on the reimbursement side. All of that would come from the county EOC. The city would be probably overwhelmed to try and accomplish everything in the beginning and then close it out with all of that. So, okay. Any questions so far from the table? So I'm going to throw some more at us. Okay. Okay, so now we had those initial impacts. Now we have information coming in that on buildings, we have broken windows and chunks of the facade have fallen from the arcade. The post office tower is showing major cracks and appears to be leaning. Businesses at the Y have shattered glass and building debris scattered around their exteriors. On the transportation corridors, we have a bridge that's compromised with major cracks in it. And it's the San Antonio Bridge as you leave the city limits going east up toward Upper Ojai on the Highway 150. There's conflicting reports on other bridge damage throughout the Highway 33 and 150 corridors. And we have reports of smoke coming from the extended care facility at CMH and Ojai Hospital. And again, those are just the reports that haven't been confirmed. So I forgot, I went out of order a little bit. I want to give the police chief a chance to explain what her initial actions would be and what her agency brings to this discussion.
So first, I want to say if this happens on day 3 of my assignment, I've got my work cut out for me. But the reality is that it could happen. It could happen, and we have to be all prepared to communicate with each other and network and do what we can. First thing I would like to say is, like Chief McNeil was explaining, unlike a storm or mudslides that we can kind of prepare for and plan for, this is something that for us is reactionary, right? So when an event like this happens, our dispatch centers, along with fire dispatch centers, are going to get flooded with 911 calls. And those are going to be coming into my patrol officers out here in Ojai. And at that time, kind of in line with emergency services and first responders, at that point, to any major incident that we go to, it's kind of about triaging at that point. And my contact would be with the city manager and the mayor to find out what exactly do we need to tend to first and foremost, which is the preservation of life. So if we have lives that are at stake, people that are trapped or injured in their homes, those are things that we're going to look at first and foremost and want to tend to, and then kind of go down the list from there. We have businesses that are affected with no power. Do we need to assist them to make sure that their businesses are secure and, people aren't taking it upon themselves to loot or start hoarding, equipment and supplies? So my first contact would be with the city manager, and then my second contact would be with my agency and EOC as well, to make sure that I have resources coming into the area to assist me with those tasks that I need, that we determine that we need to tend to first. EOC, they have just like Chief McNeil explained, EOC, they have their divisions just like we have set up here. My responsibility is to also contact their operations and let them know what I need up here in terms of evacuations or receiving more EMS services up here. We mentioned that roadways are being compromised. That would be another priority on my list, to make sure that those roads stay open, or at least one road to stay open, so we can get emergency services in and out of here. We saw just recently in the storm that the 33 was really the only means of getting into the Ojai Valley. So I want to make sure that that is a priority as well. When we talk about loose horses and other scenarios, we mentioned now that the CMH care facility is on fire. Obviously, fire would be coming in to assist me with that, but in terms of evacuating people out of the hospital, that would be a priority. That for us is a preservation of life scenario. So that would be at the top of my list. But again, I'm going to be reaching out to everyone at this table to assist with some of those things, and the communication definitely has to be flowing back and forth. And it's going to, in any incident, it's always chaotic. It takes time to get things moving and to get things planned out. But usually in an incident like that, because it's reactionary, that's just kind of the nature of the incident. So initially, unfortunately, that would be my position, and how I would kind of reach out to everyone at this table to make sure that we can get some of those things done.
Great. Yeah, you'll have your hands full, I'm sure, right? Chief Oatman, you want to speak for fire?
I think Chief Newman took all the stuff I was going to say. So we have a plan in place. Yes, very much reactionary, but proactively reactionary. We're preparing right now for an earthquake. We can't determine all the stuff that's going to happen, but we are proactive on planning for it, and then we have to react to the actual conditions that present themselves. When you see a piece of paper like this, overwhelming just sitting in this room, much less getting out there. But when you really start kind of breaking it down using the term triage, where you're just kind of sizing everything up, and then you start to prioritize with that life safety, like Chief Newman spoke of as being your number, that's your kind of your leading guideline. What's the life safety? So typically, I'll even use early this morning, for example, I was on duty, had no idea there was an earthquake up here in Ojai. We had an all points bulletin that went out. We went into what's called a Plan 1 earthquake, which means just kind of do an inspection, be prepared. There could be areas. So initially, every one of the fire stations did a quick assessment of their own, themselves. Are they okay? Is their facility okay? Something as simple as at a fire station, can you get those front doors open? And should we pull the equipment out on the ramp while, in case we have that aftershock, and maybe they're not working now, but they're not going to work 10 minutes from now. So we have our own little kind of sizing up. Everybody in this room, if it happened right now, as much as we're officials and all that kind of stuff, we also have a home that we're concerned about in that. So we have a system put in place on how to check on our families, that kind of stuff, so that we can better be focused out here, knowing that our families are safe. So we're going to, these fire stations are going to start doing an immediate triage of the area, driving around. Probably one of the toughest things to do. I was involved in, I don't remember what, the early 90s earthquake, the Northridge earthquake. I was on duty. And fortunately, in the area I was on, was not heavily hit that I was in. But still, when you're driving around, people are flagging help. But you're kind of in this, I need to get the big picture. I can't just stop at everybody that stubbed their toe or something like that. I got to kind of get that big picture. That's part of the triage thing that we're doing. And then we'll start prioritizing. In this area, recognizing that it's very easy to get cut off in this area, I, as the battalion chief, which is in charge of the whole area, the engine companies are out doing their local things, and they may be taking action, especially if the life safety thing is involved. recognizing that this could get cut off, recognizing that we have possibly have several problems here, I would order additional equipment to get up into the area, probably 5 what we call strike teams, which would be 25 fire engines, probably coming from Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, that kind of stuff, and probably even ordering a USAR task force or urban search and rescue, which Ventura County has a full urban search and rescue task force, but there's a good chance that it wouldn't come out of this. They're probably engaged in stuff in Ventura County already, because I can go down a whole bunch of rabbit holes, but the people that are those USAR people also are staffing fire engines. So they're out just doing their regular fire engine job. And then if the USAR elements needed, we would have to either get them to come back or whatever. The department at a higher level is going to initiate a recall. So we would get, all this, like Chief McNeil said, a lot of this is clunky and it's kind of going to take a little bit of time. Those strike teams coming from other areas, it's going to be immediately ordered. It's going to be immediately sent, assuming that they don't have the same problems we do. They have to kind of size up their own area and then determine, yes, we have resources available to loan to other people. But that all takes time. Lost my train of thought there for a second. Kind of going down a lot of rabbit holes. So the recall would happen. That's going to give us additional staffing, getting people up into the Ojai Valley, probably getting them staged at the Oakview Fire Station, because it's a large area that, where we need, where are we going to put them to stage them while we prioritize and utilize them. And then obviously, I think on this thing, the 2 big concerns to us is the facility at CMH and the school with the trapped children. Not to mention all the other stuff that we're talking about with building damage and stuff. Those are all populated right now. So there is, a real threat. Either one of those, the CMH thing or the San Antonio school, if that happened right now without an earthquake, it's a major incident. It's easily a second alarm incident. We have people coming from all over to help us. So if either one of those is real, it's a big deal. Much less both of those. So the big thing for us is prioritizing that, ordering additional equipment at a higher level that's getting it enrolling, and then we just kind of take action based on those priorities.
Great. Thank you. Wow. You can see the public safety agencies are going to be overwhelmed. This is a widespread issue. We haven't even talked about access even into the valley to bring in those additional resources. But what is common with the city leadership and public safety is they're setting priorities. That's the way you manage emergencies or crisis. You have to set priorities, because just like Chief Oatman said, if you are starting to go after a lower priority and you're forgetting about these higher priorities, you're going to get stuck doing something that's a lower priority and using up resources where it's probably not the most efficient. So consider that in all your roles in here is when you come to the table for a briefing of the crisis or the incident at hand, is you have an idea of 1, 2, maybe 3 priorities within your control or your jurisdiction, excuse me. Okay, so all of this is in an effort. James said it well. This goes back to post-Thomas, when the city was eager to refresh emergency plans, reconvene the disaster council to give suggestion to city council that can implement. I mean, it's a big process, right? One of the main objectives of that effort, or this continued effort, is to engage everyone else, not only the people at the table here and people that work for you and your entity, but the public. Look, if the city is saying, hey, everyone needs to prepare. Yeah, we get that. But if the city's not really showing that they're preparing, how much buy-in are you really going to get from the community? So I think it's been a great point to James's leadership, and Mayor Sticks mentioned it in her comments with James, is he gets that. He has set his priorities, and his priorities are to get city the city efforts in line to encourage everyone else to get prepared. Because you're going to realize that if you're not self-prepared, you're going to fail, because we're going to continue down this scenario. And we can already imagine where it's going, right? This is our map of the surrounding area. Pretty much all of our accesses are going to get cut off. We just had, 12 inches of rain in 24 hours, and we were pretty much cut off for about, an hour there, because 33 South going out of Oakview had some rocks in it. Pretty quick to clear. But if the whole slide was to go like it did back in a while ago, we're locked in. So what is our plan when you're locked in? And that's the other thing I would just mention when you're refreshing your plans or initiating your plans or developing your plans is have backup plans or contingencies built into that, right? We're talking about how we're going to mitigate some of this, and we have cell service, we have all of our normal communications. Well, communications are going to go away because we're going to speak with our amateur. Let me get this right. The Ventura County Auxiliary Communication Services Ojai Valley Amateur Radio Club guy. I'm going to give him the microphone in a minute here, and he can explain what his role is when we have communication failures and we need to go through certain protocols. And if we don't include him, there's a reason he's sitting at the table here and his staff. So think about that when you're refreshing your plans or putting your plans together, is to have backup plans. But before we go to that, so we have an unconfirmed report of smoke showing from the extended care facility at the hospital. Hospital person, where are we? What, you have a microphone right there. So let's see, how's this? It's going to come in through 911, right? Police and fire are going to get some kind of a 911 call and response. I'm just going to say for scenario, say you've been notified, you have smoke showing from the extended care facility, which is the building behind the hospital. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you just speak to what your initial actions would be and any plans you have in place?
So the fortunate part, that's a brand new building. So really good fire suppression systems. Let's hope it was built.
The water's out though.
That's terrible. So it was built to compartmentalize like a lot of healthcare facilities, so we can start prioritizing that way. But for us initially with our plans, we have our own policies and procedures, and emergency operations plan is to do all those same things. Just really size up the situation, triage. We already have sick people within our facilities. That CCC carries on an average about 65 to 70 patients a day. So now we got to start figuring how to get those people that probably really can't care for themselves to get them out. And that's going to start being our priority. But with those two facilities that we have, and like anybody else, you're going to be on your own for a while. That's the nice thing. It is during the day. You're going to have a little larger staff, but it's still a very skeleton staff that's going on and trying to get all those people to assess what we have going on. We know that we have the CC, the fire that's going on. Possibly it's smoke showing. Let's just hope it's something, really that Ventura County can come up and get that thing knocked out and keep everybody there, and then have that be a place where we can put people, maybe get some people out of the hospital to prepare for any other coming wounded that happen to be, because if nobody can get in, nobody can get out. So we've got to start caring for those people who are within the city and really focusing on those sorts of things. So, but it's those same sort of things. It's prioritizing. We'll set up our own. It's the hospital incident command system, the HICS system, which is just a parody to the ICS system. So we have a very trained amount of people that really understand that system, and we'll function just like you see here within our EOC to start making some of those things happen. It's going to be definitely much more skeleton crew than you see that's in most EOCs, and we would hope to have some of those cooperations. Well, we may send somebody over to your EOC to act as that stakeholder, how big this is, but keep in mind we're 2 hospitals and 30 clinics going on. So we have to assess. It's during the day. It'd be much better if this was at night. Didn't have to worry about the clinics, but it's not, so we have to.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And it's obvious that the hospital and have thought about this and prepared for it. And that's very reassuring. Thank you. So as this scenario is going on, at some point, Mayor Sticks and her fellow council members are going to make their way into the EOC, right? Because they're going to want to know. They've got people calling them, and I mean, they are the face of the city, is the city council, and that's true for any of the cities that we either live in or serve or have been aware of. So, and I would imagine, and I'll give her a second to answer this, but I would imagine she'll want to know what is going on, right? So it's about information at that point. It's not so much what are we doing, but it's really what is going on? What is the scale of this? And then what are we going to do would be the follow-up question, I would imagine. So just in a little bit of a brief response, what would be your concerns as the mayor of the city when you have this scenario going on?
Find out what's happening basically, and to get that information out as quickly as possible. And to, as Robin said, to dispel any rumors. So communicating, and I'll probably hop on my bike and ride over here and James, and to find out, and staff, and to find out exactly what's happening, and communicating with my council members to get the information out there. And I just want to thank staff also for working so hard on this. We're so grateful to all of you for coordinating, and I'll be talking to Robin, talking to Kira, just to get the truth is really powerful, and to get it out there in very simple terms, and also to direct people where to go to get information, because very often people don't know where to go and don't know where to turn. So
Yeah, no, I would imagine there's huge concern from city leadership in a situation like that. The unit within the EOC that is probably the most busy in the beginning, and probably throughout the whole incident or scenario, is public information. So in the early stages of setting up the EOC, and before I go there, I think back to James's decision to set up the EOC, whether it's an obvious one where we have a mass situation or a widespread situation like we have now, or it's the beginning of COVID. Is it, do we really ramp up? I'm not getting into his head. I just want, but if you're ever leaning on the fence of whether to open or not, you can always open it for a half hour. But what it does is it gives a location for the mayor to ride her bike to and actually have a face-to-face conversation. Because again, we have to assume our communications are going to be compromised. So, and then back to the hospital's response, they set up their own team. And I would imagine a lot of the entities at the table set up their own team. It's the real challenge is how do you, and when you have a skeleton crew, how do you get representation to this space, or even the county level space, or any other space that you need to occupy? So that can be a challenge. And if you can't do it by some type of communication, you have to do it in person. So just consider that when you're thinking about your plans. So back, what's that?
Down the sandwich board.
Well, I think I'm gonna let go back to information, because I think that is the key to a lot of this being successful. And the EOC will be set up. Part of the EOC setting up is staffing this desk right here, which is public information. How that extends beyond is to be answered by both James and Rob. So here. Okay. What's going on in the beginning? How are you getting your information, and what are you doing with it?
So the first thing that we're really going to look at is connecting people with where to go to get information, because as you said, Mayor, can you hear me okay? As you said, people don't know where to go. And we've been really focusing on that in our outreach, our preparedness outreach. Is we have a radio station. We're going to have sandwich boards up if we need to do that. We're going to be using Facebook and Twitter to amplify the county's messaging. And then we want to direct everybody to VC Emergency and let them know that's the accurate place to go for information. So when you hear rumors, go to VC Emergency and check that out. And then we will take that messaging. We might tailor it a little bit and localize it, but we're going to put that out to our constituents. We also have My Ojai, which is another tool. VC Alert is an additional tool that the county will be using for evacuations and major warnings. So our job is to connect with all of that, to see what's going out, what's true, to get that back out to the larger community. First thing that we'll do, though, to answer your question, is to activate our communications team. So we're going to have somebody who's in charge of social media, who is monitoring the rumors and dispelling them, working, with the larger team to make sure that things are corrected right away before they really amplify. We'll have somebody that's working with council, as I mentioned earlier, and working with the EOC director to maybe take a little bit of weight off the director, because I know everybody wants to go to the police chief, the fire chief, and the EOC director. And if we can kind of move some of that over to public information, that's what we do. So we'll have another team who works taking incoming inquiries, because I know from other disasters, we get a lot of people who call, and it's everything from, I want to volunteer and help, to my house is on fire and I don't know, I didn't call 911. I mean, we get all kinds of different things. So really to triage those calls that come in and get them where they need to go, to keep a list of the people who want to volunteer and of concerns. So that's where we start. And that's pretty much how it continues, through the event. It's just as things come in, we assess and we get it back out.
And to answer Laura's question, so the EOC is essentially a windowless tiny room in the police station, and I do not recommend anybody spend any length of time there. I was losing my mind by about the third day over there during the fire. But so that room is not really intended or set up to be the public room. That's the room we have the public information officers. They are posting information, sharing information, coordinating to get signs up, taking phone calls, but it's not really set up to just let people come in. We've talked a lot with the county Office of Emergency Services, our public safety partners. One of the, I think, concerns that I hear a lot from them is don't tell people to go to this place because we don't know if that place will be there in that emergency. So, it's always very hesitant to say, like, just go to Nordhoff, which is what everybody's used to, because if the right incident happens, that might not be the location. So we're always very careful about kind of giving that disclaimer. But I think historically, Nordhoff High School has been the location, which actually was a perfect segue. I don't know if you're going there, but if the earthquake is on a Wednesday and kids are in school, I think one of our key public safety our key partners is going to be the school district. Plus, that has historically been the emergency shelter site. So.
Yeah, no, that is a good segue. And Laura, did you get your question answered as far as, well, can you ask it again?
Well, if it's
Microphone, please.
Yeah. And media partners have come into the EOC. So, I thought you were talking about general public. So if the media is coming in and saying, how do we get information or anything else, it would be the contact through the EOC and through our public information, or me.
So just a quick little EOC exercise, right? So the request comes in from public information that, hey, we need to get our signboards out, our sandwich boards out there. We need to get our digital signs set up at the highway locations. How does that happen? So the request comes in. Who do I go to? Hey, operations, do you have any staff that you could tow these things out, deliver them? Logistics, do you have anyone that can do that? We need fuel for it potentially. I don't know all the details of this, but this team definitely does. But that would be, kind of a low level exercise of what the EOC would be expected to do. The request comes in, it gets kind of filtered, and then it gets delegated out to the different units within the EOC. And of course, planning and intelligence with a capital I records everything, right? So we can review all of this at the end. So James brings up a good point. Let's say public safety in this scenario has evacuated community members and they've sent them to a certain location. Red Cross, you've been asked to, well, first of all, you've already introduced yourself, but how do you get deployed? Who requests you, and what kind of information do you work off of?
Okay, a little bit ago, it was mentioned, thank you. A little bit ago, it was mentioned about how OES, Patrick Maynard, in his group kind of kicks things off for the county. And so there's typically a coordination call initiated by the county, then with all the partners and the different divisions and so forth. And at that point, they share what information they know. So if there is damage up in Ojai and it looks like there's going to be evacuations that will be issued, it could be the same thing going on in Santa Paula or any other areas that are being impacted by it. So based on that, we would then have a subsequent call with the county's HSA, Human Services Agency group, and they have a group specifically sheltering and mass care. And we would talk about a plan, because just as we, the Red Cross, have assets and supplies and personnel, they have also developed a very strong team with an incredible amount of supplies. So it'd be kind of the idea of, okay, Red Cross, you focus on maybe the Ojai area, because we do have in place supplies up here already. We mentioned Nordhoff High School. We have a Connex trailer there that has cots and equipment for 150 people. And then over at the Miners Oaks Police Department, we have another trailer that can be towed, and it has supplies for 100 people. So basically, we have supplies for about 250 people, including some cots for ADA needs. based on access to the valley, that could impact us in terms of getting our trained volunteers here. We have very limited volunteers in the area that we could call upon in order to staff the shelter. So that would be one of our obstacles. The other obstacle is, yes, we have cots and blankets and health supplies, but we don't keep any type of food or water because of the idea of expiration. And so feeding any population that has been evacuated to the shelters would be an issue that we would need to coordinate with the EOC up here or with the county EOC. So our efforts basically start with that coordination call with the county. We're always included in that call. And then from there, once we've been able to get the initial idea of what the magnitude of the incident, then we flow it down. And as new reports come in, then we try to adjust accordingly.
So the initial part of the plan is you're somewhat of a standalone resource. Meaning you don't need to lean on city staff or resources to stand up.
Correct.
But then if it gets to the point where, like your example, where you're cut off, you can't get your the food situation, or you can't even get volunteers up here, then there may be some coordination or ask to the city to help support.
Yep.
Now, what does that look like? I don't know, maybe this is way off on a tangent, but are we engaging like local grocery stores to help us out on this, or? It's a disaster. We're locked in.
Faster. Right. Now, so we are able to reach out to them. We have groups within Red Cross that can do that can make those calls. But again, are the grocery stores open? Are they responding? So it just depends on the magnitude of the event and even what resources are available up here.
Now, when you stand up, do you come to an EOC at the city level? You're going to open up communications? I think you already mentioned that you would open up communication, but you're going to be so short staffed that it's hard to represent at this table if there's a planning meeting, let's say, that's called at a certain time of the day.
We do have a volunteer that's always on site in the county EOC. Okay. And so there's communication going on there. So in the past, our communication has always been back to the county EOC. Would the city have a rep in the county's EOC?
It depends. We've worked with the county and have, depending on what the scenario was, if people are locked out of the valley or not, we've talked about either situations where we'd have a staff person in their EOC or they'd have a staff person in our EOC. Okay.
So I would say it depends on how communications are set up initially. Who should we communicate with? Should it be someone in the city EOC? Because if we need to know an approximate count of how many people have been evacuated, that typically flows down to the county EOC. But so who would you want us to communicate? We're always going to be communicating with the county, but then is there someone in the city that you want us to communicate with?
I think that's what I was going to say. Is I think that just primary communication on any event that is county-wide like this one would be through the county. But I think our goal would be having through these exercises, having a better connection where then we also would be communicating with you. But we wouldn't, I think the county EOC, one thing they always stress is they want to make sure they're not getting left out of the loop. So we would not be trying to, cut them out of it.
Now, having direct communication with someone here in the city, I think would be great because you're going to be more hands-on in terms of damage assessment. You talked about earlier doing, windshield damage assessment to see what's going on. And all of that type of information is a benefit to us so that we can anticipate what the needs are going to be.
And again, it speaks to the effectiveness this EOC could be. We're playing out your scenario and we're locked in. You have limited staff because of access issues. It's now going to be a longer term sheltering where you need food, water, the longer term needs. Of course, it's going to be coordinated with the county, but the county county OES may have limited resources. They're going to have the same access issues. It may be a request that comes in through the director of the EOC here in the city. He may engage logistics and finance. Hey, we need to find food for 150 people. Red Cross has got this request. Let's see what we can do, coordinate it with the county. And you can see how that collaboration could work and maybe even be more efficient in a situation like that,
Yes,
where it's city specific somewhat. So
Now, if we do have access to the valley, I don't see food as an issue. I don't see it as an issue at all. It's if you guys get cut off that we then can't be providing food up here.
During the Thomas Fire, we fed people with district resources and it worked really well. But I do feel like there could be an event where the city might need Nordoff as a resource for people where the county may not be ready to make that large emergency declaration for all. So I think there definitely should work out that hierarchy for us because, you know, we're always open to providing that space. I use my personal truck to get the cots across town, which actually was the reason we moved the container. Cause we're like, this is, you know, this road could be blocked or we could not have volunteers or staff here. And so I definitely think that's something we can work on.
Okay.
In our, you know, kitchens, the food would spoil without power anyways. So we were happy to make it, you know, use it and it's always available. So
Yeah. Okay, great.
yeah, that's awesome. So another good example of what this table can do during an emergency. So let's say we played out again. You're having a request for assist with food and water or long-term sheltering, and we're all scratching our head trying to figure out, okay, who do we ask? And then someone steps up and gives that information. I mean, what a great potential outcome or solution to that particular issue. So again, that's why the collaboration is important. That's why we need to do this more often. Because we're going to learn a little bit of something, and that's all we take away. Hey, the school district has resources that we didn't even think about that we could engage on something like this. Beautiful. That's a win. So we've up to this point have talked about having real clear communications. Everyone can text. Everyone can do whatever they normally do on their personal devices. Our AM radio is up. All the public our social media blasts are going out. Everyone's informed. But let's play it out to where we don't have that. It's either completely compromised our cell service and maybe, well, let's just call cell service right now, completely gone. Yeah, good luck, right? So we do have in the EOC, we do see, these are landlines, by the way, if you haven't seen one of these in a while. They have a cord on them. You can get about 3 feet away. But the EOC, that is part of their backup plan on the communication is landlines. I think we'll all probably use cell phones in the beginning. That's what we're comfortable with. We have everyone's contact information on there. So your plan needs to have a backup communication failure protocol and maybe even a written or typed out contact list because we always have them on our phone, but if that just not working. So with that, further into that failure plan, we would be engaging. I told him I'd come back to him. Ventura County Auxiliary Communication Services. Can you speak to what role you would have in this if you were asked to mobilize your resources and stand up some kind of communications? Because we have complete cell service failure and some landline failure.
Sure. We operate under the assumption that there's no power, no phones, no internet, no nothing. In the incident command system, we are in the communications component under logistics. We have amateur radio stations at every police department in the county, every hospital in the county, and then and also Red Cross should be a station down there. We just put in a station at Casitas. Here in the county, here in the valley, we have the PD, the hospital, the ARC Center over there, and then Oakview Park and Resource Center down there. If in an event like that, my people would come up on their radios and we would establish a network over our local repeater here on Black Mountain. And then, of course, we would assume that the same thing would be happening at the county level. So there would be a network started on the repeater up on Sulphur Mountain, which is the county repeater. So I or one of my people would come to the PD. Our radio station is right down the hall from where the EOC would be set up. We'd start monitoring both of those networks. So I'm listening to my people after they check their own safety, then they'll be reviewing the area around them. Used to when we had the OK drills and all the search stuff, we had teams that would go out and feed into us where the damage was. So we'd be taking note of what damage the people are reporting by radio. And then at the same time, I'm listening to the county net as they start to mobilize. There is, of course, a station at the government center down at the EOC there. So that would be manned, and they'd put out the mobilization order that we would all be mobilized under OES. So we would just be gathering information, and if, for example, if Red Cross did get set up, a shelter get set up, we have a go box, radio go box, as we set up during the Thomas fire that sets up there at the shelter. So the shelters are normally manned by amateur radio operators when they're set up. Also, we would assist James Hahn, and we helped set up the RAM emergency station here at the PD. So we're familiar with that, and we could help get those notices out on the emergency AM station. We know how to do that. And that's about it. We just within the radio groups within the county, they'd start to set up personnel assignments and shifts and all kinds of stuff, and we would man these stations as long as necessary, and try to fill in. I mean, we do the ICS forms, for example. If you're going to be doing financial forms, you got to get them out, and if you don't have another good way to do it, we may very well be sending those forms to wherever they have to go. So that's kind of it. We're back up. If all else fails, then we're there to step in.
So you can send data too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
If I could jump in real quick, we're doing a solar project at Nordhoff right now with a microgrid that should give us 3 days of power for everything for the Red Cross shelter. So I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a station there, and I just wanted to let you know we should have some power, and we currently do have generators and a few thousand gallons of fuel over at the district office property, which we did use to keep power up when it was out during the Thomas fire. So that's always available as well.
Yeah, it all fits together. If we get mobilized, we bring over our gear, we set up our antennas right there with the trailer, and so we're operating on voice and digital.
So how does it look if James makes a decision that he has to have communication with county EOC? If he had to pick one line of communication, and you were going to serve that, so do you sit in the EOC, or you have access to the building?
We're down the hall where the radios are.
In the same building.
In the same building, right down the hall. Yeah. So either we'd have a runner going back and forth, passing messages, and then we'd pass it like that. I can't very well sit down there in the EOC with all the radio activity back up.
No, I think everyone realizes that we're compromised for sure, but if we're relying on your services, then we've really taken a big hit on our communication.
You'd have to have a runner doing that.
Okay. Again, just another tool that the EOC can use to stay in communication with the big EOC that's going to send resources and everything else that goes with their support. So just a real quick thing on communication, obviously cell phones, landlines, some of the agencies, I know police and fire, maybe the city, have satellite phones. Okay, maybe some other entities in the room have satellite phones. That's another layer or level of communication. But I think if we have the real deal here, and this scenario is the real thing, we're going to be using your services as a redundancy for sure. So, okay, so a scenario like this is definitely going to compromise our utilities, right? We've talked about power outages, communication outages, and everything else. I want to give an opportunity for, I already hit on Casitas Water, their system failing, the sprinkler system, not at his fault though. The sprinkler system at the extended care facility has been compromised because the ground's moved and things have happened. But Casitas, what is your thought? Your initial actions when you're made aware of this situation?
It's basically activating our EOC, initiating our plans. We have a couple response plans, one a federal one for the dam. And then also our internal one. But the first steps would definitely be to make sure our staff is in safe condition. This scenario, we'd have people throughout the district. So trying to find out where everyone is. first of all, evacuate the buildings. And then once realize everyone's safe, then it would be about inspecting the system to see where the damage is. Depending on if we have power, if we do have power, we can maintain it with our SCADA system, which is just digitally tracks where each of the reservoirs are and pump stations and just the general condition. We can tell if there's any major leaks based on, if there's any loss in any tanks. But if we're not able to have access to that, then it'd have to be staff doing site inspections. So driving around the district, maintaining that, and then coming back and reporting. And then based on the results we get from there, that determines what resources we use.
Is part of your plan to reach out to the city or the county and give them an assessment of your system?
Yeah, we have our public relations department, so they would be in communication with that.
Yeah, right. Information is the key for sure. So I would recommend to city EOC, if we haven't heard from Casitas and there's most likely compromised systems, that you reach out to them if they haven't already got ahead of you. So, all right, great. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, well, so water is going to be compromised. Power is going to be compromised. We already talked about 80% of the city and surrounding area being without power. So can you speak to that?
So public safety would be our number one concern. We have troublemans that would be responding to 911 wire downs, removing hazard, de-energizing lines, and they would also be switching circuitry around to make sure we are keeping as much load up as possible. On top of everything happening, we also have ESOC, which is a security operations center. They would, when an emergency like this happens, they send out a call and a text to employees that live in the area to make sure that they're safe and if they're able to come to work. So we would also getting a pulse on how much staff we have in the area to come into work on top of the people already working. So we would have our troublemen out responding to 911 wire downs. If it becomes too much for them to handle, we would also start DAT teams, which is damage assessment teams, which is made up of planners along with production specialists. Really, we need boots on the ground, seeing where the damage is, what needs to happen in order to fix it, poles down, just all around what crews will need to be going out to restore power. City Hall, police stations, hospitals are our high priority. So if there is a fire at the hospital, we would be working close with the fire department, having troublemen or crew out there, possibly de-energizing hospital in order to make it safe for fire and police and everybody to get people out. I think that's it.
Either fortunately or unfortunately, it's been kind of perfected with the public safety power shutdowns and the whole assessment, post-assessment, and energizing after, appropriate inspections and all of that goes with it. So again, unfortunately, practice does make it, I don't know, I wouldn't say perfect. I don't think anyone performs perfectly in a scenario like this, but if you can perform better than you would have the day before, then I think we've hit something good. So so the scenario is continuing to go, right? Because we have a couple more minutes to continue on this before we review it. Is we have reports that San Antonio School, which is outside the city limits, but definitely has some influence with the city because people that go there live in the city and work there live in the city, hopefully. It has shown some signs of imminent collapse, or there's already collapse. We have reports of trapped people, both teachers, students, and any other faculty there. So fire and police respond out there as one of their many responses, and they determine it's as reported. We have buildings down and we have potential injuries, if not fatalities. So fire's already talked about, fire and law both talked about what that response would be on their side of it. What does the school do in a situation like that? What is the plan, if you even have one for something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, so we do have a current plan. Typically for an earthquake, it's turning off utilities to things until we can inspect the campus. So we have our maps, we have wrenches, tool bags, kits. We have a similar operation where we call all of our staff and say, are you safe? Are you in a place where you can come in? Especially key during Thomas Fire, people left. you know? So we had a very small staff of people who were left. And so typically we will go in and turn off utilities that we don't require. And so that would be most sites. Our district office would be left on typically, because that is our internet hub. And then Nordoff is our main concern. And so that's the kind of key piece. If I got this call or James reached out and said, you know, we're sending people, I would probably have staff on the ground as soon as possible to at least turn off utilities into the site to make it a little bit safer. That way you're not dealing with, you know, broken gas lines or anything like that. And so Thomas Fire was a good practice, I would say, because then you had multiple days where you were getting key systems up in key places, and then you kind of work backwards. And so we eventually had everything back up, I think by like day 3 or 4, even though the fire was still going. We had internet and everything. We had video over at Nordoff so people could see the news, because I think that was a great point about getting ahead of rumor. That was a really tough one, I think. So for us, we try to make sure also that our EOC is our cabinet, which is our 6 district administrators, including site administrators as principals. And so we all make key determinations of, is school going to be open, closed? Is it going to be a hybrid? Are we going to send kids home early? So we engage that pretty quickly. And I would think, in a case of an earthquake, we're going to prioritize people getting home with their families over classroom instructional time or anything like that. So like in this rainstorm, we were up till 10, 11 o'clock talking about it, and then up at 5 a.m. driving all the roads with my staff to make sure that everything was safe so we could actually bus kids into school. And so I'd love to engage with you guys a little bit more so that we know what you're seeing, because a lot of that, we go on Facebook and we hear this road's down or this, you can't get here. And then, my mechanic drove, he's like, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing going on. So we definitely, we trust, but we verify all information. And also in this case, I would reach out to, SoCal Gas and just start that process of working on the system. But I think in a case of an earthquake, that would be 3-4 days out. Like once things stabilize, I'm not really worried about getting the site back up at that point.
Yeah, it feels like your biggest challenge is reunifying the families, right? And so how does that look? I mean, do you have a way? You have a way to communicate to parents, I assume. So they start driving in, and then that's organized with your staff somehow to.
Yeah, so that was actually one of our first projects when Dr. Morse came on, because I'd been through the Thomas Fire. We all lived it, right? So my parents had Verizon in Oakview, but friends had AT&T and staff had AT&T. I could talk to my parents. I couldn't talk to staff that had AT&T because their tower was down in Oakview. So communications just becomes very difficult. So the big thing we did was we went to Parent Square, which is not a server running in my district office, MDF, which had no power until day 3 of the Thomas Fire. So we moved communications offsite, and we have plans where someone would have to drive down the hill, get to internet to make that all call. And the system has, we can make calls, we can translate calls, we can do text, we can do email. So we would do an all call emergency in this case where, whatever that determination was, we're closing school. And then what we do as well, and it always depends on the situation. If we had safe sites that were de-energized and were truly safe, we would turn those into places where your child will be at this campus, or we're going to be at Nordoff and we have our buses come in and get people to that safe area. And then, we get the clipboards, we pull attendance records, we do all of that stuff on the back end. But the initial communication would be through Parent Square, which would be a call in this kind of scenario, a call, email, and a text, most likely. We're not going to leave anything to chance at that point.
Yeah, schools and hospitals and, infrastructure, buildings within cities seem to be the most well-versed at it outside the public safety agencies. And I mean, don't schools do a shakeout? Is that November or something for earthquakes? I mean, seriously, they're doing it at least once a year more than I know I'm doing it as far as practicing and getting ready or preparing for an earthquake. So yeah, the schools and that would be one of those injects or information pieces that come in that is going to be on high alert for information, accurate information to get out. I mean, anytime you hear of kids being injured or schools damaged or anything like that is going to be a high level. So that is going to test the speed at which you can get accurate information and it gets disseminated through the officials.
Well, I would say we would be very interested in being a leg of this where we would value the city's opinion highly. Should school go on tomorrow? Not to say we give up that authority, but this is what we're seeing. We really don't think safe travel is possible tomorrow or whatever it is, and I think that would be really useful for us.
Yeah, and it also just to add to the point or repeat it is, this is the city of Ojai. This is the limits, right, on this particular map, and it goes all the way down, not even to where is this, like Miramani area. Well, here's Miramani right here, and then here's the Denison grade, and then 33, which we won't travel for a few years, is up that way somewhere. But is this 4.4 square miles? 4.5 or something? 3 square miles? Oh, 4.3. Yeah. So it's geographically, it's not a big area, but the point to that pointing to the map is there is jurisdictional lines. But in a disaster, as we know, the disaster doesn't care. So the fires burn through lines, earthquakes are going to go beyond the lines. But in this scenario, it's a school that's outside the city. But again, the city has a lot of interest for sure and potential influence in the outcome of that particular scenario, right? So one thing you do have to kind of keep in mind is jurisdictions, because the city doesn't want to be doing stuff that the county's already doing for inefficiency reasons. But you may not have the authority to really do it anyways. So, but where police and fire have been really successful over the years on disasters is going across those boundaries. Regional responses, the dispatch centers dispatch more than one agency, so that line of communication, and when it's all kind of under one roof, the similar idea behind the EOC, which is it's a hub under one roof that can handle a lot of different challenges that come to it. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to give Chris Danch was with Ojai Fire Safe Council. So we're like, why would he be here? What decision is he going to? He's not necessarily going to make decisions during the emergency, but he's more on the prep side. And I just want to give him an opportunity to speak to a couple of the projects they've got going right now. And this whole disaster guide and this talk about emergency planning and specifically evacuations. He's got a couple programs that the city is going to benefit huge from on the information and the outcome of these projects. So Chris, if you could just chat about that for a couple minutes.
Microphone, please. Technically challenged all the time in my life. That's why I have young people around me that help me do all these things. We have launched 4 major projects, the culmination of which is a community wildfire protection plan. This is a 16-month project that's supported by fine scale risk mapping, Embercast modeling and mapping, evacuation and other vulnerability assessments and planning. And I want to begin by announcing that we have a dedicated website to the CWP process. We have flyers that when Callie comes back, she can hand out with that link on there and the QR code. We will be having on that site and on our main site is a online survey that I encourage everybody to take. I will step back for a second and say our planning area is bigger than the city of Ojai. It's about 350 square miles, and it covers upper Ojai down to Santa Paula, up 33, obviously the greater Ojai Valley. It goes down the Ventura River watershed to Foster Park and Casita Springs, and includes the Teague watershed as well. So if you're in that planning area, please do the online survey. The more people that respond, the more information we have to help set priorities and plan projects. The CWP will end up with a 10-year project plan. I want to also point out that while, yes, we are focused on wildfire, the planning and preparation that has been going on and will be in this next 16 months is applicable in many ways to all disasters and help us. So we have obviously vulnerability assessments of critical infrastructure. We have transportation assessments and vulnerabilities, which could include road closures from debris flows or anything like that could occur in any kind of disaster. We will be looking at evacuation planning, including large animals running down Persimmon Hill. And then we would have, we're looking at what happens in power outages, including catastrophic grid failure. We're looking at other innovative ways of having public emergency communications, such as VGI, crowdsourced data, things like that can go on and supplement what's already happening or even provide critical information in real time that isn't possible, like it was not possible during the Thomas fire. We're looking at all sorts of personal preparedness, community preparedness, neighborhood preparedness. All of that is applicable to all disasters in which people have to take care. Looking at increased shelter in place options, temporary refuge areas that can be stocked and staffed if necessary, depending on how it all unfolds. And then we're also looking at building overall. The overarching goal of this is increased community resiliency and cohesion and preparedness for any major event that affects the community. So that's an overarching goal of the CWPP and the whole process. I'll end by saying we beginning the community involvement with 2 community workshops that are scheduled on February 15th and 16th. On February 15th, it's here in this room, starting at 6 o'clock. And then on the next day, it's at 7 o'clock at the Oakview Community Center. And then we'll have a virtual live community workshop following that as well. These will all be filmed, recorded, available. And please log on to the site. Please sign up for updates. There's both a general update we have on our main website, and there's also a dedicated update for the CWP process. And it's very important because this is a community-driven, community-focused plan. And we work closely with the agencies, but this is a community plan. So the supplement and complement what the public safety agencies are doing. So I invite everybody to participate. Challenge everybody is take the survey and then get 10 friends or family to do the same thing if they're within the project area, planning area. So with that, that's what we're involved with, and look forward to everybody's participation in this important process. And this is the first ever community wildfire protection plan ever done for this area. Thanks, John.
Yeah, so definitely the community is moving forward with preparedness, and what I like about that, what Chris is doing and his team is doing, is we're gonna bring science and experts, more experts, into the discussion, and really drill down into evacuation routes, proper evacuation routes. I mean, there's just so much more that we're going to get out of it, and it'll only improve what the city has already done with their emergency documents and the recent guide that was just put out. So
there'll be created a digital dashboard for the mapping program. There'll be we'll probably expand the web portal into something that is permanent for people to log into as well. And in the evacuation planning, we are bringing in transportation modelers that will take the fine scale data we're doing, and just giving CAL FIRE's announcement on its new maps shows we need to do this more than ever because those maps aren't much of an improvement in our humble opinion. And so, yes, but what we hope to build is going to help us in any kind of major event, including wildfire.
Maps, we've heard that a bunch on this discussion. So yeah, we had some maps up here. We would have them bigger than the EOC. They'd have a lot more detail to them. It's just the start. But if we would let's just say we had a report. We did have the report of the one bridge leaving town heading east on 150 at the San Antonio Creek has now failed. Okay, well, you can get up on the map, and that would be somewhere, let's see here, right about here. We could put, and this is where you'd want Caltrans coming in or county roads coming in and go, hey, can you give us a list or give us an idea of all the bridges? Put all the bridges up there, because you have to assume during an earthquake, especially after 20 inches of rain, we're probably going to have some kind of failures in our bridges, definitely our roads, right? So that thing would be peppered. I think just off the top of my head, I was just taking notes on it the other day. There's probably 8 to 10 primary bridges for access into the valley, in and around the valley, right? So go back to the San Antonio school issue. Well, you have a couple bridges over the Thatcher Creek and San Antonio Creek that if they're compromised or gone, what do you have to helicopter people out? I mean, there's not a lot of options. So again, it's just to reinforce the reality of how devastating even a moderate earthquake could be to our valley, and particularly the city, right? So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to throw any more running horses or burning buildings or anything else at the group, but I would like anyone that's in the audience that has a question or something they've been kind of thinking about while we've been discussing that, if you want to ask the question to the table, just raise your hand if you have any interest in asking a question. I'm going to bring the mic over to you.
Larry Steingold. I'm new to California, so you'll have to bear with me. I see a lot of regulations. This is wonderful. This is absolutely astounding. I should be required to have an emergency plan and a go bag in my home and know where everything is. It should be required. Thank you.
Agree. Tough to enforce the requirement, but yeah, look at if we could get as much, I'll just use the word passion in this discussion, which I felt like we did get, that the city has witnessed in the last 2 days with the school board meeting and the recent city council meeting. It's passion, right? I mean, people have a lot of passion for this stuff. If we can keep this topic as passionate as those two recent topics, I think we're on the right track for sure. So just more civil though, right? Yes, I was going to go around the table and give everyone a chance, and I'll start with Laura, but that'll be kind of the closeout here. So go ahead. You have a mic right there.
Got my own mic. Hi, I just wanted to let everybody know the Ojai Valley News is also, our operations are in the cloud, so we don't need our physical building, which is on Signal, which is in the middle of town. So we can also be there with sandwich boards and, have runners running over to City Hall and getting information out through that way. We do post on our website, as it is now, every single day, all through the night when there's something big going on. When the storm happened, we had 40,000 users in that 1 week. The fact is, people do turn to the newspaper, and on our Facebook page during COVID, we had 56,000 interactions per week on the site during the first few months of COVID too, on that Facebook page. So we're monitoring scanners all the time, all the time we are. And when something happens, we'll be looking at scanners, looking at all of the resources that you guys have. I'm hoping the hospital has a connection to Perry Van Houten or Kimberly. I want to make sure, and school district. We right now, one of our news editor, Marianne Ratcliffe, has a student at school, so she's been on the parent square. But whenever our kids are matriculated, we'll definitely need to make sure that we have access to that so that we can monitor that for you and get that out. Finding Wi-Fi and hotspot that would be an issue. I'm glad to know Wayne, and I'll pursue that. But so our goal is going to be knowing how to direct people to where do people need to be evacuated? Where are resources for them? And then we're also gathering situational issues in real time and posting them up. So we hope that you'll be monitoring our channels on Twitter and Facebook as well. And but they'll all be linked to our website, which is also, a countywide. It's a very strong site, and none of it's located locally. So I'm happy to help you interface and talking about having real information. There is no more, we are the reliable source 100% all the time. So we want to hear from you so that we can be stronger with you in that. Thanks.
Let's just continue around the table next with Edison. If you have any closing comments or, questions that need to be clarified.
Pick up a flyer, attend the workshops, or one of them, actually, they're duplicates, and take the online survey, and please involve yourself in our planning process. It is a community-wide planning process.
Thank you very much for the invite. Glad to be here. New to the organization, so thank you all.
Yeah, I just want to also echo the appreciation for the invite to this today. And I really look forward to engaging with you all in the future.
Thanks for the invitation to have the Humane Society represented here at the table. I just want to take a minute to make sure that everybody's aware of our primary function in a disaster, earthquake, or any scenario. We are primarily a receiving facility for animals that are being evacuated for people who don't have anywhere to go. Let's take this scenario, for instance. Someone's residential structure is unsafe. They have to leave. They suddenly find themselves in their driveway with their pets in their car, hopefully in a carrier, but perhaps even not. We are the destination for those people. So what happens in a disaster scenario is we are immediately in touch with the city EOC and the county EOC. We supply with a reference sheet of what our capacities are. We have capacity for up to 100 dogs, large animals, horses. We do have assets. So in the scenario with the horses running, I do understand City of Ojai contracts with Ventura County Animal Services. It would be quicker to call us first, because what's going to happen is you're going to call Brian Bray down there or Jackie Rose, and she's going to call me. So in that situation, the streamlined version of it is to go straight to us. We are also in a scenario like that immediately in touch with Jackie and Brian Bray. We work really closely with them cross agency. Just a couple weekends ago, I was in touch with Terry at Red Cross to make sure that we knew what the large animal capacities were at the fairgrounds, which at that time were 0, and that animals could be coming up here. So we are in communications cross agency. There is, our primary function is to receive, but we do have assets. We have diesel trucks with horse trailers, so we could send a lead vehicle out to, say, the situation with the horses, and then send a team to actually retrieve them. So we do have that capacity as well. There are families evacuated out to a shelter and they have their pets with them. Well, but that shelter isn't a shelter that takes pets. There is the possibility of us, setting up some outreach in that capacity as well, or setting up a specific time for people to be from that shelter to be coming over. So we do have a lot of capacity, and it's going to soon be increasing. So, I'm going to make sure we continue this conversation so that we know, everybody's in sync with what we have to offer and who to contact in that situation. So thanks for allowing us to be at this table so we could let you all know how we can be of service.
Yeah. So first, thanks for having us here as well. Present on my mind is keeping the conversation flowing. And this is a great opportunity, but I think we need to figure out more. I'm a millennial, so I'm like, hey, let's put up a Discord and we can separate everybody by task, but could be email if that's cool with everyone else. And also phone numbers, right? Like with the school district, I'll give you my personal cell number, and you guys need help with anything at all, a place for people to camp out and sleep or park trucks or anything like that. Like, we're always here for that. And so the other piece is I did have some questions, but I think they're logistical. Red Cross City, present on my mind is always the filter fiasco of the Thomas Fire. We had ordered some filters and then we couldn't pay for them when they arrived, and I still have nightmares about it. So I think that those little things could be worked on together. And I look forward to it.
Thank you. I think I'm barely a millennial and I have no idea what Discord is. So I might need to ask you about that. I want to give a little bit of an advertisement for the city just developed and prepared an emergency preparedness guide, and we had announced in the paper the week before the last storm, and it was kind of interesting that we announced that they're available at City Hall, and kind of the week before the storm, nobody came in and got any, and then the week after the storm, everybody came in and got them. And so the lesson there, I think, is to try to be prepared before the next emergency and don't wait till the next one hits and then come in and say, what should we do? I think one of the goals today was getting everybody in contact, kind of making sure we have all the connections, but also helping the public to understand how this works and helping the public to understand who's responsible for what. And one key thing is helping the public understand that they also need to be prepared and they also need to be able to help themselves, because in a situation like the Thomas Fire, where the power was out and the phone lines were out and police and fire and all of our agencies were all scrambling to get our situations situated, there was a few hours there where people had to be self-sufficient, and hopefully we can keep tightening that up. But I think that in a real emergency, that there's probably going to be that period. So a big message for the community is be prepared. Have your go bag, like Larry Steingold said. Have your pets stuff ready to go, their medication, all those things. And the emergency guide that we put out speaks to that as well. The last thing I just want to say to everybody, because these are really the key agencies in the valley that make a lot of things run in this valley. So I really do appreciate your time coming out. I'm sure all of you are in a similar situation of not enough staff and way too much to do. So I really know and appreciate that sitting here for 2 hours is a big deal, but I think that the community appreciates it and we definitely appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. And I just want to reiterate what James just said. Thank you to all the stakeholders for being here. Thanks to city staff for all your work. Thank you for the community for showing up, because clearly we're all in this together. Emergencies don't know, I think, John, you said boundaries. They just flow, right? Like the water. And a big thank you to John for organizing this and running this so efficiently. And clearly you are a master. So we are in great gratitude to you. And also that clearly we all need to take personal responsibility for ourselves, our families, our neighbors, our pets, and get ready. So that will be the push from now on. Just getting that communication out there. So thank you again for all being here.
Thank you again. It was nice meeting everyone. There's nothing like being in a major incident and feeling like you're alone. That's a very scary feeling. So seeing everyone at this table is a great feeling.
Yeah, Supervisor Livier's office is just here to support and connect anybody and everybody within this valley, as well as Ventura. And well done, Mr. Vega, bringing us together, and Chief McNeil. Great to see you always.
I just want to say that I think this was a great drill. I think there were some good points brought up all around. If you're looking at it from the outside, you can just see how we're used to seeing the fire trucks on the road, the police cars on the road, kind of actively engaging, but there's so much more. They're supported by such a large umbrella above them. And so it's good to point that out. I just wanted to kind of catch, there was a couple key points that jumped out at me. Ojai Fire Safe Council talked about even being prepared for the fire, that which you generally do makes you that much more prepared for an earthquake. Somebody talked about having a kit. So for many years, the fire department pushed a program called Ready, Set, Go, which was obviously the wildfire thing, but it's kind of those same things. If you take any one of the templates, Ready, Set, Go, any earthquake, whatever it is, and you kind of just start preparing for that, you're going to find your family really more prepared. It's more and more common to have the power out, what are they called? Pre-plan. The planned power outages, which just makes you that much more, prepared for even something like that. Even if you're not evacuating, how are you going to go without electricity for 2 or 3 days? That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Plans are great, but practice. And just to say that hams practice every week, and we test all the EOCs and everything every 2 months, and even then we find surprises. Something isn't working the way we thought. So, and I'm hoping that the next version of this drill is on the books, is out in the schedule, even more comprehensive. We need to set up the Red Cross shelter just to exercise that. And things will go wrong. We talked about the chaos, but we just got to practice in every way. Thanks.
Go ahead, Chris.
On our main website is, and I believe on yours as well, are resources like how to pack a go bag, how to make a family evacuation plan, how to do a contact list. Again, they apply to all disasters, not just wildfire. So there are a lot of resources available out there. On our site, there's personal resources for your own preparedness that you can access on the main site.
Question back here.
Thank you. Anna Milgosa with Supervisor Matt Livier's office. As part of the drill, there was a mention of the church having volunteers wanting to contact the city. Through Supervisor Livier's office, we just hosted an in-person CERT class, Community Emergency Response Team, in person that, was throughout the whole Oakview, Ojai Valley wide. There was a group of about 25 to 30 folks who were trained in light search and rescue, first aid, triage. How do we get those people to you as to volunteer for in such a scenario? Who do you contact?
No, it's a great question, because I believe the CERT program, a lot of the trainers are fire department members, right? It's a fire department partnered program, but it's run by Ashby, who lives in Ojai. That's appropriate, right? No, it's a good question. So we have all these plans, right? We have these resources that we could use, but how do we get them to the table? My answer, and this is just speaking from running command posts out initially on incidents, is people that can get themselves to the command post. And I'm not saying, rush the command post, but sometimes it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And I know that's not a good, clean answer, but I think by being here and mentioning it is a start for sure. But if you know that the EOC in your local area is set up, somehow reach out to the EOC and say, hey, we have this resource. We would like to engage and we have, whatever the details are of it. So that is one way. And then I'll have James speak to it because he would most likely be requesting it.
Yeah, one of the sneaky things we're doing today is we're asking everybody to give us their contact information, and we will not hesitate to call you and email you and hound you going into the future. So that's really, I think, the best answer. Leave us the information on that sign-in sheet, and we'll make sure we connect. So,
go ahead, Wayne.
I just have to address this. If only we could recreate the full CERT system that we had a few years ago. There are hundreds of CERT trained people in the Valley. Valley's divided into 9 neighborhoods. There was a CERT team in each neighborhood that would go out and do that survey. We had a ham radio operator that would operate with each of the teams. And that was how a lot of that initial damage assessment was coming in from people surveying their own area. We ran drills at the time. And then again, through the ham radio operator would come into the EOC, to our EOC. We've met with the people out at the mobile home park there in Baldwin, where I know that the CERT group is starting up again. But if only we could recreate that. It's an incredible resource, valley-wide, and talk about instant communication coming in. It's just a really, really good thing to have. So support that any way we can.
Yeah, you also spoke about practice. So this whole effort goes back. I think we talked about it post Thomas Fire, and it was reviewing, refreshing emergency plans within the city. The emergency disaster guide went out recently, and we all knew that once we get the guide out, not only are we trying to set an example at the city leadership level, but we need to practice what we just put out, right? So this is the first step in that. So I can't speak for the city manager, but I want to strongly suggest that we continue this. And the next one might be more interactive, right? This was kind of a hybrid between what a true tabletop exercise is and a discussion, right? So, but this felt like the proper first step in this next step or next effort. So I think I'm hoping, and I'm going to suggest in the future that we do get to where we can actually integrate more of the skills and players and role play a little more. Maybe it might have to last a little longer, but either way, take it to another level, right? And continue the practice that you mentioned, Wayne. Okay, so with that, there is some handouts in the back. The disaster guide that James Vega had mentioned is back there. I just want to make sure we hit all of our objectives. The first one, test our skills with a Z. I don't know if we tested them. Maybe we tested them, but we identified the skill set, and it's a high level skill set in this room, which is reassuring that if the big one hits, that I think and the city will have a positive outcome. So collective is really the key there, and I think we've all hit that on collaboration in our follow-ups. And the idea and the who, what, and the where, again, that's a more of an awareness. What is the utility companies? What are the utility companies going to do? Who are they? What are they going to do? Where are they going to be? And we can go around the table and answer that now, I think, from most of your inputs, right? The after action review is just more of a formal way to collect all this information, discuss it. And it's really about what was planned, what really happened, what worked and what didn't work. And that's how it goes. And it's used by, like I said, the public safety agencies on follow-ups to emergencies and responses, but it's not a finger pointing session. There's no names in it. It's just the what's and the who, not the who's, but the, where it went and kind of the outcomes. So we didn't officially do it, that way it's modeled, but I think by going around the table, I think everyone had an opportunity to kind of close out and make sure they got their input captured in this. And then we also asked the audience. I think we hit most of them. I don't know if we hit well, we're 12:07 right now, so we were close to that noon time. So that's it from me. I'm going to turn it back over to James, and it's all yours.
That's it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I think the meeting's adjourned. So thank you.